Hello and welcome to Canvas the Niger-Delta Roundtable, where I discuss the future of the region, humongously blessed with hydrocarbon resources. Now, every week, I give some time to reflecting on topics relevant to the development of the Niger-Delta and her people. This episode is no different as I'm here once again to focus on how to take the region to a more promising future. And the program is sponsored by the operator of the NNPC, SPDC, to Total Energies Ajib Joint Venture, the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited, headquartered in Port Harcourt. Thanks for joining. I'm Ade Dayo. It was shocking. Now, our topic for this episode of the podcast is Down syndrome without being down. Down syndrome occurs when an individual has an extra, partial, or whole copy of chromosome 21. It is not yet known why this syndrome occurs, but Down syndrome has always been part of the human condition. It exists in all regions across the globe and commonly results in variable effects on learning styles, physical characteristics, and health. In December 2011, the General Assembly declared 21 March as World Down Syndrome Day in order to raise public awareness of Down syndrome. Now, this year, 2025, the theme is End the Stereotypes. And we're here to do just that by showcasing the joy, resilience, and remarkable accomplishments of individuals with Down syndrome. We'll be breaking down harmful stereotypes and exploring how we can all contribute to a more inclusive and supportive society. So, stay with us as we hear from my amazing guest who's making a difference and proving that Down syndrome is not a limitation but a unique and beautiful part of people living with it. Again, our topic today, Canvas, is Down syndrome without being down. And my guest is Mercy Emmanuel-Worgu. My guest, Mercy Emmanuel-Worgu, is a certified autism specialist, an applied behavioral analyst, a communication therapy disability specialist, as well as a certified caregiver for the elderly. She is the CEO and founder of Utmost Care and Therapy Services Limited, UTCATS, and Utmost Care and Neurodevelopmental Foundation, UCANF. Mercy Emmanuel-Worgu, hi, welcome to Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable.
Thank you so much.
It's great to have you here, and I think in the introduction, which I read out a while ago, this podcast is about the development of the Niger Delta region.
Okay.
You can't talk about development without talking about people, and people is made up of different kinds of demography: old people, young people, male, female.
People were living with disabilities and the
Absolutely,
neurotypical.
and people living with disabilities are part of the demography.
Yeah.
Are they a critical part of the demography? Let's start on that note.
Okay. It's when we talk about the society, everybody inclusive. So people living at the neurotypical and the neuroatypical. So everybody have to be involved in the society.
Mm. Is everyone relevant to society? Does
Everyone is
everyone
relevant.
can everyone contribute something to the
Everyone
development?
can contribute. Whether you're neuroatypical or neurotypical, everybody has their part to play. That is what gives us the total society.
Can you
Nobody
break that
should be
down?
sidelined.
Can you break that down, please? When you say neurotypical and neuroatypical, what does
Yeah,
that
when I
mean?
mean neurotypical, that's what we call the normal, in quotes, the normal human being, those living without disability or impairment. And then when you talk about neuroatypical, we are talking about those that have differences in their brain. Then we talk about people living with disabilities. Then we are looking at the visually impaired, the auditory impaired, those that have hearing issues. The layman will call them the deaf. Those that have visual issue, hearing impairment, the layman will call them the blind.
Mm.
Oh, everybody is important in the society.
I'm curious. When I was preparing and doing some research for this episode of the podcast to record this, I reached out to some contacts to get me someone who is capable and competent to discuss this and share some insights. It didn't come quickly. Apparently, there are not a lot of you around. So I'm curious once again, what is your background and how did you come about advocating and caring for people with Down syndrome?
Okay, prior to this time, let me start with my BSc. I had my BSc in microbiology. I've always wanted medicine. So my mind was that after that, I'm going to go back and continue medicine and come up being a doctor. Why do I want to be a doctor? I just want my service to be the type that brings relief to humanity. But prior to that time, and when I had finished, I was like, okay, maybe I could start up a work while I'm looking for the admission for medicine. Then I stumbled into an organization that render care services for individuals with neurodiversity. And I was assigned to a child. The child was nonverbal. The child had a diagnosis of autism. And I had to do extra when I was assigned to the child. I had also done a basic training as a registered behavioral technician with an international body. That was in 2014. So I got registered as a behavioral therapist and I had the diploma certificate in it. Coming to that, I found out that the services I was doing, the activities I was doing with this child was helping the child to meet up with her milestones. And I could see the smile of relief on the parent's face at the child who wasn't talking and is now talking with one word, and the child who wasn't sitting at a place, sitting down at a place. I could see that smile of hope. And I told myself, wow, is this things that I'm doing that is what is helping the child to meet up with her expected milestones? Oh, then it's what exploring. So I stayed back and I started building my career in it. And from there, I set up my own. I got certified as an international certified autism specialist in 2020, and I had my MSc in communication therapy and disability studies from Uniport. So we have been on it, and we
Mm.
continue to. We've been pushing it, and a lot has been achieved.
And while we were talking before the recording started, you're also on another academic path currently.
Yes, yes, I'm also an academic. I'm having going through my PGD program in education.
Okay, all right. So let's treat the primary focus of why we're here today then,
Thank you.
and let's continue on this note rather. What is Down syndrome?
Okay, Down syndrome, like you had introduced, it is a presence of an extra or is a presence of an partial. When you say partial, in part or in full of chromosome on 21, on the chromosome 21, the extra presence of chromosome on the 21. You remember, that means that chromosomes are in pairs. They are in pairs. So that extra brings an extra presence in it, making it three, whether partial or full. And that presence brings about a lot of distortion with the cognitive side of the person, brings about a lot of distortion with the physical part of the person. So you see them with, you see that their faces, if you look at people with Down syndrome, they almost have similar kind of looks. So that gives them that extra presence of the chromosome on 21
Mm.
on 21. I'm emphasizing on the 21 because there could be extra on other chromosomes and they are not Down syndrome. There could be extra on 13. We have extra on 13. We have extra on 18. They are different. They are the same. They are trisomy, but they are not trisomy 21. It's only trisomy 21 that is Down syndrome. So it comes up with those features, the person having a language impairment, having cognitive impairment, and some health challenges, especially heart defect and all that.
All right, let me borrow some of the expression. So when we have a trisomy, am I right?
Yes.
And some other chromosomes, let's say 13, for example, do they lead to something as well, some
Yes,
impairment or some
yes,
health challenge?
yes. They lead to similar thing as you can see in Down syndrome, but they have some unique features as well.
Mm.
But when you look at the common features, you will see that you will still see the cognitive impairment, you still see the other health comorbidities, like heart defect, respiratory infections, and all that. You still see that physical distortion of the human looks, the slanted eyes, the small ear, the incurved little finger, and the toughened skin, the thick palmar line on the palm. You still see those features, but they also come with their uniqueness.
Oh,
Trisomy 21 is the one that is very common. Even in the trisomy 21, there are types. There's the mild one, there's the moderate one, there's the severe one.
okay. If I may, just a reminder that I'm the lay person in this conversation. So if we have an extra chromosome in chromosome 21,
Yeah.
that it's suggesting to me that we were able to identify it today. In other words, we can see it.
Yeah.
Why don't we just remove it?
And this is
If
chromosomes
that
that we
sounds
are
sensible.
genetics we are talking about.
Okay.
Like even in their advanced country, I think they have a means of detecting it from the womb if there is an extra chromosome and the child is going to be born with Down syndrome. But I don't think we have such yet in Nigeria. So you still see people come up with the defect and all that. It's a genetic something. It's chromosomal abnormalities. Nobody can tell you it's going to happen, it's about to happen, or the mutation just happened. And for us at a developing country that we don't have a means of detecting it when the baby is still in the womb, the baby comes out to be that. And Down syndrome is one of the learning disabilities or one of the chromosomal abnormalities that once the child is born, you see it. It's not like autism. Autism does not have any physical impairment. The child is beautiful, handsome, coming out. Is as the child is growing, you notice some neurodevelopmental defects. But Down syndrome is very physical. You just see it. As the baby is born, you see it.
It's
All the
interesting.
features will be glaring at you.
It's interesting you went there because that was going to be my next question. Now, you're giving some insight already, but if you don't mind, could you elaborate some more? What's the difference between Down syndrome and autism?
Down syndrome is a chromosomal abnormalities. Autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder. That means that it is, for now, we don't know whether autism is genetic or hereditary. It's differences in the brain. It has to do with the brain. The way your brain is structured, you're functioning well. You are able to process what I'm telling you and giving me the feedback that I am experting. Then you are able to understand your environment. If you want to talk, your organs are intact, your brain is processing it, and you are going at that level. You are able to associate with your friends. You are able to know when you want to be alone. You understand the weather, you understand the intensity of the light. But people with autism, they have that neuro differences that doesn't allow them to process information as it ought to be, bringing about the communication impairment, bringing about the social impairment, which is characterized, those are the features, bringing about the sensory impairment. So you could see that a child with autism might not want to wear a cotton cloth or might not want to wear a silky cloth, might not want to eat a certain kind of food because they don't understand the process. Their brain is wired in a way that that is not taken. But we don't have all that in Down syndrome. Down syndrome is chromosomal, is hereditary. So if you have a chance of having a child with Down syndrome, you could, even not just only Down syndrome, all the neurodiversity conditions.
The theme for this year's World Down Syndrome Day has to do with ending stereotypes. Speaking of which, what are some of the more common stereotypes associated with Down syndrome and how harmful are they?
Let me start by saying the stereotype that is very common. Once people say that a child has Down syndrome, they believe that, oh, that might be, let me use this word in quotes, the child is a dundee, the child is a dolent, we're not able to learn. They also believe that maybe it's what the parent has done that has brought about this. They also believe that Down syndrome, because the mother is the age of the mother, that the child has the Down syndrome. There are a lot of stereotypes. They believe that people with Down syndrome don't live long. But let me start clearing all this one by one. From the age of the mother, they say women of older age have the tendency to give birth to children who are Down syndrome. But right now, from researches, we have found out that even women at that has higher fertility rate from 35, they are even had children with Down syndrome. We also believe that the what will I call it, the health sector. Yes, Down syndrome comes with some comorbidities. Like I said, the heart defect, where you see them coming up with holes in the heart, having respiratory issues. Those are the things that led to their early death. I'm going by the US standard right now. Researchers have shown that as at 1982 to 1983, An individual with Down syndrome has life expectancy of 25 years. But from today, as we speak, they have life expectancy of 60 years. Why is that? Because their health sectors, their health sectors have improved, being able to manage these health defects, the comorbidities that come with Down syndrome, and giving the individuals a better chance to live longer. And what can we say about Nigeria? If those children are being born and there's proper health care to manage the holes, to manage the other diseases, they could also live longer. So the idea, the stereotype that they don't live long, it depends on the level of health services that is available for them to access.
Speaking of stereotypes, if I may just harp a little on one of the ones you mentioned about the age of the woman, I've also read and heard over time that the older a woman gets, the less the quality of her eggs, and this could increase the possibility or the potentials of her giving birth to a child with some neurological deficiency.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the age of 35 a while ago. I've heard some school of thoughts even suggest that 35 could be considered old as well, as far as a woman's fertility or especially the quality of her eggs is concerned. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, to a very large extent, there might be. But I choose to go by my experience in this field right now because I have been on this field for 10 years plus, and I have consulted for a lot of parents. I have seen very young couples in their 20s, in their early 30s, give birth to children with, let me not just pin it to Down syndrome, but neurodiversity, give birth to children with neurological challenges. So I refuse to accept that research that had said that it's based on, there's a possibility to that, but we cannot just streamline it to that. So what happened to the young ones that I have seen? About 70% of my consultations, the parents are not that old.
Is Down syndrome hereditary?
Yeah, I could say it's genetics. So genetics is heredity. There's the capacity that if you have a child with Down syndrome in your from a family, it might not repeat in the next family, but it will find its way somehow in the generation to come to repeat to surface.
So I'm going to ask you a difficult question now, or at least I think it's difficult, and I might ask you a few more difficult questions in the course of our conversation. Um, would it be advisable then for a person who is thinking to get married to someone else or make a family or make children with someone else to check first to see if in her family or in his family there's been a history of Down syndrome? And upon discovering that, believe that or draw a conclusion it could happen with us. For that reason, put an end to any such plans.
Okay. With this question, I always say that it's wisdom to ask such questions. It's okay to probe. I mean, not just with Down syndrome. When somebody want to go into marriage, you ask a lot of questions. You want to know the family tree. You want to know some things that have not been told in the open. So it's very wise of the person to go on, ask all the questions that you can. Then the possibility of you accepting what the research is, the outcome of the researches that you've made is led for you. I mean, we have seen people who say, I am AA, you are AA, AS, AS. Oh, we still get married. Let's give birth to the SS. It's something we can manage. So it's left for you as an individual. If you have discovered that, oh, this person has the history of have in their family, they have the history of neurodiversity, I can still go on. If I have it, I can manage it. Oh, I won't be able to take this kind of thing, so I'm ending the relationship. Is your personal belief.
Mm.
Mm.
How can we as a society end the stereotypes and make for a more inclusive society?
Let's start by the awareness. Awareness precedes acceptance. Some people are not aware, so they don't even know what to accept. If the society can be informed what these conditions are and that they are educated on how they can be empathetic rather than sympathetic. That will go a long way to include the people living with Down syndrome in our society, because the fear of stigmatization is not only on the child, it's also on the parents, it's also on the relatives, it's also on the family, it's also on the immediate society. Oh, I don't want somebody to see that I have a child with Down syndrome. So the child is being locked up. But when a person has the knowledge that despite my child might have trisomy 21, I will rather look at the abilities of this child and hone it, because they have individual differences. They are gifted ones among them. What is it that my child can look out for? And that might just be what will sell the child in the society. So rather than looking at the disability, let's look at the abilities in them as well. But the society will only need to be enlightened through awareness to know that despite there is a deficit, it is not all bad. With our support, they can strive.
What are some of the key challenges faced by persons living with Down syndrome, and how can we address them?
I will look at it from the challenges. I will look at it from the cognitive impairment, and I will look at it from the health impairment. Okay, so that goes to education and the health sector. You can see a child who is being born with Down syndrome, and then they are also telling you that the child has 3 holes. So there's going to be frequent visitation to the hospital. If
The child has what?
3 holes in the heart.
Okay.
So, and then that is pure medical. If our medical facilities can be up and doing to be
Is that a common feature, by the way?
yes, that's part of it.
Okay.
So their challenges remain the cognitive impairment, and they have 50% IQ capacity. For the mad one, they have the capacity of having 50% IQ. So that means that if the education sector too can understand that this child that has Down syndrome is having cognitive impairment, and know that if I'm giving a child, a neurotypical child, that's a child without Down syndrome, in quotes, 10 minutes to do this job, I should give the one with Down syndrome 20 minutes to do this job. And it's even there in the Prohibition Act, in the Prohibition Act, the number of time that if a child with a neurotypical child is being given an hour to do an assignment or to do a task, the one with learning disability should be given 2 hours, 30 minutes. That's an hour, 30 minutes extra. But how many schools are doing it? They share the same curriculum to them, they teach the same pattern. It won't work. The one with the Down syndrome has to go on modified curriculum, differential teaching. Teachers have been taught differential teaching. Look at the learning style, look at the capacity of the child, and teach the child to know bit by bit. Everybody must not go on the same pace. Then the health sector too, if they can be up and doing, be proactive with these children. Okay, this is a child with Down syndrome. This is what is expected. This is what is expected. Educate the parent. This is what you see. This is what you see. At this point in time, brush the child. You see that will be a more supportive society.
This next might be another maybe difficult question. Maybe can persons living with Down syndrome live in normal life? I mean, normal contextually, of course. I mean, can they aspire like a seemingly normal person? Can they become doctors or engineers or whatever else it is for that matter?
Okay. For me, I say optimal living. What is optimal living? I rather say optimal living for the children with learning disability, a child with Down syndrome. That is living at their maximum potential. If I have a child who has Down syndrome, and I try to know the type of Down syndrome, is it the mosaic? The mosaic Down syndrome is the mildest type of Down syndrome. So I get to know the child's IQ, and I look out for skills that I can hone. Maybe the child will have a painting skill, the child might have interest in music, the child might have interest in If the child has interest in biology, fine. So I look at it. What best can this child be with this interest? So it's not just the parents putting it that I have always dreamed to be the mother of a doctor. So whether Down syndrome or not, the child has to be a doctor. Down syndrome is there, consider that, but is not a limitation to what your child can achieve. Look out for the skills and help the child to have optimal living in those skills or in that skill. Because some of them can come up with more skill. You see somebody interested in music, you see somebody interested in art. That's why you're there to guide. Where is the strength? Where does the child have more strength? And hone that. Let the child use that to earn a living. And that's satisfactory. Don't you think so?
I
That's
suppose.
satisfactory. And that's optimal living. And the child is able to make a living out of it. He knows the value of money, is able to sell for the ones that can paint, is able to sell the artwork, make a living out of it.
When I asked about challenges earlier on, you more or less categorize them into two broad areas: education and health.
Yeah.
You more or less also painted a portrait of us having challenges with dealing with both here in Nigeria, and I believe including the Niger Delta. But globally speaking, or maybe even in Nigeria, have there been any advancements as far as education and healthcare that has improved the quality of life of the Down syndrome community?
Okay. Right now, I always say, let me go by the education sector. I belong to an association they call National Association for Special Educators, NASET, and the president of the organization is Dr. Catherine James Atang. And we speak, we talk. During our conferences, we have always segmented the special need into three arms: the visually impaired, the auditory impaired, and the neurodiversity, where Down syndrome also fall in. So during that, we look at policies, we look at potentials, we look at trainings that will enhance these people in the area of education. That is what I can talk of. So there are things that are programs are going on, individuals, initiatives, some NGOs too are running this program to make sure that they come up with something comfortable that the society will look at to help these people strive in their skills. But in the aspect of the health sector, I may not be able to give an update on
Mm.
that. But on the education aspect, I know that a lot have been going on through that body asset to make sure that in the education sector that they are carried out. They write WAEC, they are scored, they are able to go to universities. Things are going on there.
What roles do family members and caregivers play in supporting individuals living with Down syndrome?
They play a lot of roles. First of all, the first thing is for the family to accept what they have. Some families have not accepted what they have. So when you accept what you have, then you can look out for ways to assist. I run a therapy center, and when people come for initial consultation, I tell them accept the child. Yes, maybe true. Some people say it's not my portion. I'm not accepting this. But if you truly accept, so their support levels start from accepting. They need to accept this is my child and the child has Down syndrome. How best can I now help? So when you accept, you look for way out. So you look for organization, you look for therapy centers, you look for good health facilities. This must be at your fingertips. You know that certainly the child will have to be subjected to uh, therapy interventions because there is this protruded tongue. One of the features they have is protruded tongue. When the tongue is protruded like that, they have inarticulate speech. They have wobbly speech. So it's the duty of the speech therapist to know what to do to help the child to have some level of clarity with communication. Okay.
Finally, for this half of our conversation, what resources are available for family members and caregivers who are to attend to persons living with Down syndrome, especially here in the Niger Delta and even beyond as well?
What I for on the other is it on the state level or individuals?
No, no, at
The
any level.
resources.
Yeah.
What I know for now is parents foot their bills. they foot their bills, except maybe some NGOs that may come up and say, okay, this we can support to a certain level. Like my NGO level, if I admit a child with the parents from a low background, we don't turn down on any child. We'll try to subsidize
And your
from
NGO
the
is?
NGO angle so that we'll be able to attend to the child, because therapy is not cheap, truth be told. And the child needs it. The child needs the therapy intervention. The child needs the health services. The child needs all that to meet up with expected milestones. So the resources are not cheap to come. There are parents that are well to do so. They foot their bills. But on the other side, if it is my organization, we find a way to accept the child and not turn down. If there are also any other NGOs that might support in one way or the other, but on the nation of the the public aspect, maybe the federal government aspect, I'm not sure that there is. I'm not too sure. Let me not say.
And your organization again is?
Osmos Care and Therapy Services
And
Limited.
you are in Port Harcourt
Yes,
here.
we are in Port Harcourt, we are in Warri, we are in Abuja, we are in Lagos. We also do some virtual consultation for parents outside the country.
This campus in Niger-Delta Roundtable, we're discussing Down syndrome without being down. My guest is Mercy Emmanuel-Worgu. We go for a break. We'll return shortly. Conversation continues. Do please stay with us.
Our yellow and black markers indicate pipeline and flow line right-of-way boundaries. Your activity could impact on the buried high-pressure hydrocarbon pipelines and flow lines, leading to possible leaks and explosion. Please keep off. Do not engage in sand mining or any form of excavation, pipeline vandalism, oil theft, and bush burning within pipeline and flow line right-of-way. Do not farm, trade, or locate any business on pipeline and flow line right-of-way. It is against the law to apportion land, sell, or build on pipeline and flow line right-of-way. Maintain a setback distance of at least 30 meters or about 100 feet from the right-of-way boundaries always. We care for your safety and that of the environment.
This message is brought to you by the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited, SPDC, operator of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC Limited, Total Energies, and Ajib Joint Venture.
Welcome back. Still Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable, brought to you by SPDC. I'm Dio. We're discussing Down syndrome without being down in commemoration of World Down Syndrome Day. My guest is Mercy Emmanuel-Worgu. She is an expert in the field of treating, caring for, and managing people with neurological deficiencies. Mercy, you're welcome again. And is my description correct?
Yes, you're very correct, Dayo.
Oh, great. Good to have
Thank
you here
you.
again.
Nice to be here.
Early intervention. I think you mentioned that earlier on. I also had penned that down as one of the things I was going to ask you in the course of this
Okay.
conversation. How important is early intervention? What types of early interventions are there? And are they effective?
Okay, when we talk about early intervention, some school of thought is looking at the age at which the child come for intervention, at which the child, the individual with Down syndrome, is being brought for intervention. And going by the age, we are saying that from at least 3 years, 1 to 3 years is early intervention. So the child comes and receive the services. Why is early intervention important? That is the stage where the brain development is easier to structure. Say, for instance, a child, normally, once your child is a year, some 10 months, you start toilet training. And if you do that for a period of months, the child will pick it up to get that. But if a child has not been toilet trained till 10 years, it's going to be more difficult to have that individual toilet trained, because the person is already used to possibly wearing diapers, putting on himself, is comfortable with it. But at early intervention, it's easier to manage and it gives maximum progress. maximum progress. The period is being maximized for the benefit of quick progress. So early intervention is very important to a therapist who wants to make maximum progress with a child. There's also another school of thought that say early intervention has to do with when the individual was brought to you, what you are able to do timely. Do you get that? What you are able to do timely. So, like I brought, yes, somebody hasn't gone through intervention and is already 17 years. What can you do at that point in time? So, early intervention has to do with years. Early intervention has to do with how fast, what fast enough can you do for somebody, despite the age is gone to an extent, to recover the child. And whichever way, they are important. Bringing the child early as an aspect of early intervention is very important. Whenever the child person is being brought to you, no matter the age, what first, prioritizing the person's need is also early intervention. For instance, if they bring a 10-year-old child who is not talking, who is not toilet trained, is having sensory issues and all that, what will I look at first? Toilet training. You can't be 10 years and be pulling on yourself. That is also early intervention.
I must say, you're speaking with, there's such a glint in your eyes. You're speaking so passionately about this. And I don't sense that passion in a lot of people. It's really fascinating how invested in this that you are. Quite
Thank you.
something. Yeah. And that said, when you say early intervention, I remember you mentioned a while ago that from the time a child with Down syndrome is born, you can tell immediately.
Yeah.
Unlike autism, which may take a longer time to determine.
Yeah.
But with Down syndrome, it's immediate. So why is intervention not immediate then with most parents? I mean, this is your field. You've been dealing with this for years now. Why do parents or some parents then present their children for intervention at age 5 or age 10, even beyond that, when at birth, it's obvious everyone can see already this child has Down syndrome?
Yeah. Let me start by saying that some parents are not knowledgeable of what has happened to their child. Possibly they didn't give birth in the health sector. Some of them go to traditional births and they give birth and they just believe that the baby is not, they are not so clear what is happening to the baby. And they use that to buy time. So one, they're not aware. Second is some parents are in denial. Yes, they give birth to the child in a clinic and the doctor has diagnosed Down syndrome. They just want to believe that the baby will be fine with time, believing that it's not their portion. That is another factor that can hinder early intervention. And some just believe that somebody is doing them somewhere from the village. So they go to all the prayer houses, believing that miracles will happen. I believe in God, I believe in miracles. And I also wish miracles for those children, truth be told. But I think that it's high time you pursue this so that you even know what you are into. Like, my child is having Down syndrome, is having communication impairment. Oh God, help my child to recover from this. And then you are doing something about it. Do we get that?
I've often heard inclusive education, also, an expression that comes up often when discussing neurological deficiencies such as Down syndrome.
Yeah.
What does that mean, inclusive education? And then does it benefit the person living with Down syndrome and their peers also who may not have Down syndrome?
Inclusive education comes in different styles. I'm going to talk about the styles. There is what is inclusive education? There is a policy that we call zero reject policy. Zero reject policy. Some schools have it, some don't have it. Some have it, they don't even know what it means. Zero reject policy talks about that no school should turn down any child, no matter what. But my concern is not just the policy. The school might not turn down the child, but does the school have the capacity to teach that child? Are we getting it? Do they have the resources to teach that child? So inclusive education is talking about carrying, in a layman's way, like carrying everybody along, whether neurotypical or neurodivergent, carry everybody along, do differential teaching, curriculum modification. Now, there is a type where the whole children are in the same class, no matter the condition. Everybody is in the same class. They learn at their pace. There's another type where they might be in the same environment. Maybe you build a school, it's the same environment. Once they open the gate, everybody can access the school. But a different block will be assigned to children with learning disabilities, including Down syndrome. In the case where the children are all in the same class, a child with Down syndrome can be pulled out. We call it pull-out session. Pulled out and being attended to with a speech and language therapy. The child can be pulled out and being attended to, whether it be let's say a sensory integration therapy based on their need. So when all of them are in the same class and the child is being pulled out to attend to his or her special needs, it's a type of inclusive education. The situation where they are also in the same environment and a particular block is being assigned to the special learners is another form of inclusion. But how do they benefit from each other? During playtime, even the classroom time, there's that social integration. So the ones that are the neurotypical, in quote, understand that, oh, this, my friend, this is the learning style. This is how I can relate with his or her based on her ability. And the one that also neuroatypical, they understand you can teach them to join their friends to play. Well, everybody is outside throwing ball, kick to John, kick to Mary. That is registering in the child's brain. Also improve social integration. Like in my organization, in Utmost Care and Therapy Services, this World Autism Day that is forthcoming, we had plans, we have submitted some applications to some schools. What do we want to do in those schools? We want to have a section with the children where we tell them that they are special learners, they are children with autism. That's marking World Autism Day. And this is what they present. This is how you can show empathy instead of talking about them, making them feel bad in the class. We just want to have that sensitization in some schools. You get it? So when these children are knowledgeable, they know. I have met some parents that say, do you know that this was my child that told me that this child has autism? And you see them relating with the child. They understand the child's specifics, their specific abilities, and they are relating at that level with the child. What could be so sweeter than that? So it has inclusive education. The children are aware. The teachers are aware. The admin are aware. The gate man is aware. But everybody is having a supportive environment to make the child strive in a better condition.
How about workplace inclusion?
Good.
How well does that work?
That brings us to the workplace as well, which is what we are preaching. In my last year presentation, I talked about bringing out the child. As a parent, yes, there's a policy in Nigeria. It's called Prohibition Act 2018. Prohibition Act 2018. It says that 5% of the employment in the public sector should be given to people living with disabilities. But how many companies are doing that today? Do they even have 0.001% for them, assigned for them? So there is no inclusion in our workplaces. Inclusion in our workplaces entails that you see an individual who has a learning disability or has a Down syndrome, and you understand the person's uniqueness. And you know that, yes, the person might not have the capacity to do all, but can do this. Give the person that opportunity and support. You are giving other staff 5 minutes to do that, give 10 minutes and get him do that. That is inclusion in our workplace. But I was telling parents something, when I had training, I told them that if you don't bring out your child, how will the child acquire the skill so that you can fight and say, my child can do this, and you have refused to employ my child? So when the children have skill, we have been able to groom people. They can sew, they can fix the fasteners. So if you are a fashion designer, can you employ a special person just to fix the fasteners and the button and get paid? That is inclusion in the workplace.
public perception. How can the media, how can media representation or presentation of Down syndrome affect public perception, and how can that be improved on?
The media should help to magnify our voices. They should do as much free program on awareness on not just Down syndrome, on special needs. Give room, air it. They should help the NGOs, they should help the public sectors, they should help the private sectors who have passion to create this awareness by running a free program for them. I mean, I used to have a presentation, media presentation, where I pay monthly to just create awareness. At some point, I wasn't able to pay again, and that program stopped. But if I had had free this thing from the media just on this, the program would have still been on, and a lot of people would have been aware about this condition, because we used to have a lot of calls coming on, people asking questions and we clearing their questions. So I think the media can just try to create a free this is for once it has to do with inclusion or neurodiversity or special need, they should have a means of helping to air it for those who have passion for it. By so doing, we'll be spreading the good news, and somebody out there will also have solution to what he or she wants, or to
Are,
that special child.
are there things also that the media might be doing, maybe unconsciously or unknowingly, that is giving a wrong perception of people living with Down syndrome that should be stopped?
For now, I have not seen any. I have not seen any, because the media, I believe, before they air anything, they go through it, they read up a whole lot, and they cannot. I have not really seen anything that the media is doing wrong. But I just want them to also help us to magnify our voices, to preach this gospel of inclusion, acceptance, and empathy.
What programs or initiatives are currently making a significant impact in the lives of people living with Down syndrome?
Could you say that again?
What programs or initiatives are currently making a huge significance in the
Because
lives of?
like we do have, like in the US, I think they have talent show for the special needs. If we could have such things, I think last week I saw one happening in Nigeria. I was so excited.
What
An
exactly?
NGO, they were doing talent hunts,
Oh,
but they were doing it for neurotypical and neuroatypical. They were doing it. I was so excited because that alone will help children. I mean, like in my facility, we have those that can sing. There's this particular boy, he sings. Maybe I'll play you some of his music. He sings, he duets. There are some that can play the keyboard. There are some that can sew. So if they come and their talent is being reinforced, it will encourage other parents not
This
to give up.
this talent hunt you mentioned in Nigeria, where's it taking place?
I think it's taking place in Lagos.
Okay.
I think it's in Lagos with one NGO like that. I was going to reach out to them. So we could come up with a lot of initiative, like the talent hunt, like some free consultations for them, like maybe coming up to pay up their therapy fees, support in any way. It will go a long way to encourage parents with special needs and enhance the children's skills and give them the optimal living which we have been pushing for.
Now, I imagine as someone who's watching this or listening right now might be thinking, how can I get involved in supporting the Down syndrome community? What opportunities are there for them?
There are a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of ways they can support. They can support come up with a program that will benefit their education or their health sector, because I know these are the two things that are very, very distinct for them. They can come up with a scheme for them. If you have this, we get to pay for so number of years.
You work with people living with Down syndrome.
Yes.
You have an organization, an
Yes.
NGO.
Yes.
What are some of the things that your NGO, for example,
For for
need that members of the public can help
for
with?
our NGO, we really have a lot of, one of our challenges is accommodation for them, because we want to go bigger where we have accommodation for them. So we can have that land where we build accommodation, build inclusive setting for them, fine. If you also have people coming in to pay the therapy fees for some children that their parents are not able to afford their bills, that will be fine. If you can have a team of friends who come together and say, okay, what's the number? We can pay for 1 year, we can pay for 2 years, that's fine. There's nothing that could be more supportive than that.
Again, your organization is, and what exactly do you do there? I think it's important.
Okay, Utmost Care and Therapy Services there are two organizations in one. Utmost Care and Therapy Services Limited is an organization that provides therapy intervention services for the neurodivergent. That means we look at the speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, vocational therapy, sensory integration therapy, behavior modification across 4 settings. We do it in school, which is a school-based setting where the therapists go to the school to administer therapy interventions for the children with learning disabilities. We also do it in the home. We can come to your house and administer the therapy interventions. They also come to our center. We have a center for them in Port Harcourt, Warri, where you can administer this therapy intervention. And we also do virtual. We have some clients in the USA. We have some clients in the UK where we do virtual therapy for them. Some people have also brought their children back from UK and US. We intervene to a certain level and the child has gained some level of independence. They can't pick the children back. So with the NGO part, we also provide elderly care support for the elderly. That means that we can come to your home and attend to your elderly while you go to your work and live your life. We also do from the NGO aspect, we just use that to help the children. Like on our own, we save 3% of our monthly income in the NGO. So when we come across individuals that are not able to, there's zero income, we just pick the child and try to work with the child instead of saying no from the savings, and then we pay from our own NGO. If there are individuals who also want to support, we give the NGO account, and there we are able to pay for, because the therapists have to be paid. Like I always tell my staff, is my charity, is not your charity. So you get paid for your money. We are the ones in the charity, but I have a wonderful team of staff across the country.
Finally, as we observe World Down Syndrome Day globally, the final words, please, to the viewer.
I will say to all our viewers and listeners, I will say Down syndrome, the diagnosis is not the end of the child. There is a lot that you could make out of your child. Just believe in the child, accept the child, and push forward. Make the child available for the therapy interventions. Make the child available for the academic differentiation, the curriculum modifications. See what is the skill that you can hone in that child. It's not just if it's your personal child. Pass the message to anybody who has a child with Down syndrome that the diagnosis I said is not the end of the whole thing. There is a greater glory coming for the child. Just be at the right intervention setting, do the right things at the right time. You also see the child, the star in your child, bloom up just like you have always wanted it.
Mercy, thank you for your time and the great work you and your team are doing.
Thank you, Dario.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Canvas, the Niger-Delta Roundtable. We discussed Down syndrome without being down in commemoration of World Down Syndrome Day. My guest answer Mercy Emmanuel-Worgu, an expert in the field of caring for and advocating for people living with neurological disorders. Mercy, it's been a pleasure again.
Thank you, Mr. Dario. My pleasure being here.
I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. And remember, people living with Down syndrome do not have to be down necessarily. You can do a lot to make them have a better quality of life. There was an expression you used earlier, which is what? Was it full life or quality something?
Yeah, there's the disability in ability. There's ability in disability.
There's a quality something.
The quality of life.
Quality of life, absolutely. Do your best to ensure they have the best quality of life they possibly can. And a reminder, supported by SPDC, I'm Dio.